الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الواحد الأحد الفرد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله، فإنه من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد، ومن يعص الله ورسوله فلا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا. أما بعد، فأوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله تعالى، كما قال جل وعلا في كتابه المجيد: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My respected brothers and sisters, we begin by praising Allah the Exalted, the Almighty. And I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship and unconditional obedience except the one true God. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last of his prophets and the seal of his messengers. My brothers and sisters, this week we have witnessed the tragedy of the taking of innocent life, an unjustifiable and inexcusable crime, taking the most sacred of all of Allah's blessings, and that is the blessing of life and the sanctity of life. And we know that our faith calls on us to stand against injustice, whomever it's from and however it occurs. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين. O you who believe, stand firmly for justice as witnesses before God, even if it is against yourself or your parents or your next of kin. So in matters of right and wrong, there is nothing in our deen called standing for my self-interest, or standing with my family, or standing with my people, or standing with my tribe, or standing with my race. Rather, in matters of right and wrong, there is only one choice: to be consistent and deliberate in the application of justice, and to be especially protective of the rights of those who are persecuted and those who are most vulnerable. So as with injustice and all violence and terrorism across the world, this masjid and countless other Muslim institutions stand firmly with their voice and condemn that violence and that extremism without lens to who the perpetrator is. And yet, we must examine something deeply uncomfortable. We have to look at something about the media coverage of violence and terrorism when it occurs in these lands or elsewhere. We have to ask ourselves, why is violence and terrorism, why does it seem to be covered differently based on who the perpetrator of the crime is? You know, just a few months ago, there was a man named James Alex Fields Jr. This man shook this country with almost the same exact crime that shook this country this week. This man took a vehicle and, with his poisoned and demented view of the world, started to ram a crowd, killed a 32-year-old woman, injured dozens of people near Charlottesville, Virginia. But what's shocking is, if you look up the Wikipedia article or you start researching, you have to dig in the margins to find his name and find the charges brought against him. What's confusing is that those in authority and power, while those victims were still suffering in the hospital, were quick to draw a moral equivalency between that white supremacist, that neo-Nazi, and the people that were peacefully demonstrating against that poison message. So we ask ourselves, why? Why do we lack the courage to call violence, violence, to call crime, crime. Why is it when that person rams a crowd that, as people in authority all the way up to the president said, we have to wait for the facts and the investigation, and there's this tentativeness, calling evil, evil, and crime, crime. And yet, before the authorities, before the police had made their announcements, when there was allegations of this criminal in New York saying Allahu Akbar, it seems that so many people had the only fact that they cared about, which is that the alleged perpetrator was Muslim. Our faith and the values of this country call us to ask, why the hypocrisy? Why the double standards? And from this special place, we ask ourselves, when did these special words, these words of Allahu Akbar, God is greater, become taken and poisoned with this horrible message, as if the billion-plus Muslims for whom these words move them to a life of faith and practice have no voice at all? We've mentioned the dichotomy between two people that ram a car into a crowd. Two people that are both deserving of the most stern justice and to stand account for the crimes that they did. We have just a month ago, Stephen Paddock, who committed the worst, deadliest mass shooting in US history. And you look at the sheriff's comments, and they are full of discussions about his depression. Until now, our country has lacked the resolve to do a single serious congressional investigation, to bring gun laws into discussion. And yet here on this week, it's a different reaction for the crimes that have the same poison at their root. And in fact, you know, there's something that we've forgotten. There was a man named Alexander Bissonnette. This man killed 6 and injured 19 in January 2017 when he entered the mosque in Quebec, Canada. And he started shooting the worshipers as they were praying peacefully and then leaving. You know, it's alleged that when he did this crime, he said, Allahu Akbar, though he was a white supremacist. The Canadians called this terrorism, but the American authorities have yet to do so. In London, when there was a man during Ramadan being tended to and not feeling well, laying on the ground, and a man named Darren Osborne outside the Finsbury Park Mosque in London killed that man and injured 9 others. Those in the UK in authority had the courage to call this terrorism, but most Americans have yet to do so. So we ask, why the double standards and why the hypocrisy? It is a tragedy, my brothers and sisters, that in our times, so many people misunderstand the term Allahu Akbar, God is greatest, to be some kind of war cry or some kind of thing that people mention as they are about to commit injustice. And does it happen? Yes. Some people, Muslims, and as I've mentioned to you, even some non-Muslims, do this, and this is the biggest heresy. This is one of the worst sins to commit, to mention the name of God as one aggresses upon the most sacred of God's blessings, and that is life. Yet this word and this phrase do not belong to the extremists. They do not belong to extreme radical Muslims, and they do not belong to extreme white supremacists or Islamophobes. These terms, the vast majority of us, law-abiding Muslims, people filled with faith, trying to struggle to be better human beings, for whom this term Allahu Akbar moves us to be better fathers and mothers, better sons and daughters, better neighbors, better co-workers, better human beings. We have more right to this term than these criminals on the fringes of society, wherever they may come from. And you know, my brothers and sisters, I want to take you back to a moment in our history to remind you that we are not the first to grapple with this hardship. We are not the first to grapple with the hardship of some people that twist the most holy of things, and that is the connection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the connection to God, and twist it for their evil aims. You know, there was a great companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His name was Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiyallahu anhu. Abdullah ibn Zubayr was one of the young companions. And his father and mother were exemplary people. His father was Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, one of the distinguished and honored male companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And his mother was the distinguished Asma bint Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha, the sister of the mother of the believers, Aisha, and a distinguished woman with so many special stations in the seerah, and one of the companions that lived to the longest after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She lived to 100 years old. And of course that makes his grandfather the most distinguished of the companions, Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. Abdullah ibn Zubayr is a young companion. And in fact, he was the first Muslim infant born in al-Madinah al-Munawwara. So after the hijrah, after the migration from Mecca to al-Madinah, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam were going through so much hardship. There was a plague and a disease that was around al-Madinah. The muhajirin, those that came from Mecca, were especially prone to it, them not being from the people of the land. So Abu Bakr and Bilal and others became very, very ill. And of course there was also the emotional hardship of being separated from their homeland, from Mecca, leaving behind their wealth, their home, parts of their families, and doing so under the worst of persecution for 13 years. So their spirits were not high, and they were dealing with this hardship that came from the sacrifices of al-Hijrah. And some of the people of al-Madinah brought the same poisonous message that some people in America and abroad bring also to people that are suffering from hardship and leave their lands under persecution. Just as people here bring their cries for deportation, for the subjugation of some of the most vulnerable people of society, so some of the people of Medina told the muhajirin that you all have been cursed. There has been black magic done on you, and they ridiculed them and told them they will never give birth to a child in Medina. So look at this, look at these foul words, telling these distinguished companions who are already suffering so much that you're not welcome here. And you're so impure, you're so cursed, in their words, that you will never give birth to a child in these lands. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr, his birth was special, not only because of this special family, but because of these poisonous words of al-Madinah. His birth was not only a joy for his family, but it was a joy for all the city, a relief under these difficult circumstances. And it is said that Abu Bakr, his grandfather, radiyallahu anh, carried the infant child and walked in the streets of al-Madinah. And carried this child, alleviating some of the hardship and sharing this beautiful news with the people of al-Madinah. So they reacted as so many Muslims react when they're overjoyed. Some people, clap their hands in applause. Some people stand up. Some people jump up and down. But some Muslims, when they're happy and they're overjoyed, they want to express that gratitude in this pure phrase, to can make that gratitude a source of connection to Allah. So the people, they made takbir. As they saw Abdullah ibn Zubayr, they said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar out of joy mentioning the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that hope that they would overcome this hardship and any hardship with the grace of Allah. But Abdullah ibn Zubayr lived beautiful years while the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive. But then our beloved messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, he passed away. And then Abu Bakr, and then Umar, and then Uthman, and then Ali. Remember, Abdullah ibn Zubayr was young and he lived for some time. And then there came times of strife, times of fitna, times of hardship. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr was a courageous man and witnessed many difficult moments during years where the ummah was gripped with a lot of tyranny and a lot of aggression and a lot of bloodshed. And let us just take a snapshot of a life of courage at the very end of his days. When he is in Mecca al-Mukarramah, the most holy of all lands. And at its gates are the armies of Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. This tyrant general, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, came to kill Abdullah ibn Zubayr as he stood for justice in Mecca, in this most holy place. And they besieged the lands. And eventually they came in and killed Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And after that, with the crime of those that have lost their way and done the worst of crimes, mutilated his body and hung him, crucified him after he was dead. But the irony, as if these actions were not enough, was that these people, as they killed this pure and blessed soul, this companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did they say? They said, Allahu Akbar. They said, Allah is greatest, Allah is greater. And had those meanings gone from the tongue and permeated the heart, no human being would have done these crimes. Had those meanings really overtaken them in that moment, it would have stayed their hands from extending in aggression and wrongdoing. And Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he was also a young companion but a little older than Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and he lived to witness both incidents. He witnessed the takbir at the birth of Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and he witnessed the takbir when he was killed wrongfully standing for justice. فَقَالَ أَمَا وَاللَّهِ لَلَّذِينَ كَبَّرُوا عِنْدَ مَوْلِدِهِ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ هَؤُلَاءِ الَّذِينَ كَبَّرُوا عِنْدَ قَتْلِهِ. Abdullah ibn Umar says, no, I swear by God Almighty, that those who made the takbir when he was born, meaning saying Allah is greatest out of this joy, out of this faith, out of this principle, out of this hope, are far greater than those that said these same words when they killed him unjustly. Those that said it in crime and wrongdoing. My brothers and sisters, Allah Azza wa Jal says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Regardless of who uses these phrases and these deep concepts and these great connections of our faith, regardless of those that use them wrongfully and lay claim to our faith is not the perversion and wrongdoing of criminals. Our faith is not the selective reporting of media that likes one type of crime and ignores another. Our faith remains what Allah has said and what His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has demonstrated. God wants for you ease. He does not wish for you hardship. He wants you to complete the prescribed period, وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهِ, that you may glorify Him for having guided you, and so that you may be thankful. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن ارحموا من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. That those that are merciful to others, Allah will be merciful to them. show mercy to the people of the world, and the one in the heavens show mercy to you. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to envelop us and grant us His divine mercy and His grace and His bounty and His forgiveness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال الله تعالى يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah Al-Muddathir, O you who are wrapped up in your garments, arise and warn the people, and your Lord glorify. Make takbir of your Lord. The Mufassirun, the commentators on the Quran, they mention that in this glorious ayah, وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, that in speech other than the Quran, the default statement in the Arabic language would be kabbir rabbak, for one to expect the verb to come first, glorify your Lord. And yet, in this ayah, وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, when the name your Lord was brought first, to be mentioned first in the Quran, this indicates a takhsis, this indicates that this glory, that this takbir, that this special relationship is reserved for Allah Azza wa Jal alone, and is not due to any other human being, to any other creation, in a way that can be compared to this takbir that is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every day, the true meaning of this takbir is lived in lives like yours and mine, is lived in the life of Muslims. Every day, as Muslims stand in their 5 daily prayers, the key through which we enter as-salah is takbiratul ihram, to say Allahu Akbar, God is greatest. And with these words, we enter this special connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In these special moments, this is such a special time, we do not eat, we do not speak, we do not move our normal movements in life, we do not speak to anyone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these special rules in this special moment that we enter with at-takbir, reminding ourselves that whatever we bring to as-salah, from problems, from issues, from bills, from challenges, from worries, from all of this dunya, that Allah is greater than anything and everything that comes to our mind. Every day Muslims say Allahu Akbar in prayer at least 80 sometimes. And a person who prays witr and the sunnah of fajr, and Allah blesses him with some rak'at at night, such a person goes into mentioning takbir in one day more than 100 or 200 times. This takbir comes with us during Al-Eid, as we celebrate this most joyous of occasions. It comes to us when we are blessed with a new addition to our families, and the first word mentioned in their ears is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes when a person is overjoyed, and it comes when a person is met with difficult news. It comes in the special ritual worship of our lives, and yet it also comes in the simple moments of life. That if you're sitting and you enjoy a beautiful, tasty piece of food, one would react saying, Allahu Akbar. What a blessing of Allah to enjoy this special meal with good company and peace. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentions in his commentary on as-salah that the believer, when he mentions at-takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, that what leaves the tongue should permeate the heart. That then the heart focuses exclusively on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, when Allah is magnified, when Allah is glorified in one's life, then far be it from committing the worst of crimes in God's name, a person remembers that I'm not going to be harmful to my neighbor, that I'm not going to misuse my authority in the workplace, that I'm not going to cheat people in my store so I can get a couple cheap pennies and dollars, that I'm not going to drop my responsibility at home only to be questioned by Allah on the last day. These are the true meanings of takbir, and this is what causes me to say today, we want Allahu Akbar back. By what authority have people become so distant from our faith that so many people in our society, they think Allahu Akbar to be a war cry or a cry of one who is about to commit injustice? When did people have such little exposure to true Islam that that confusion can even happen? When I say we want Allahu Akbar back, I say that Muslims, I'm not speaking on my behalf, on behalf of this congregation, but the 1.5 billion overwhelmingly good, faith-filled, law-abiding, decent people for whom Allahu Akbar moves them to be better and more moral and ethical people. They should have a louder voice and more right to define this term than that it should be cherry-picked to be placed in the mouth of a radical Muslim or of a neo-Nazi white supremacist. I say this because moments like this require leadership. They require leadership in our homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children. The other day was speaking to our students, middle schoolers, some of them 10 and 11 years old. And it was mentioned by a young girl that as she was speaking to her friends, when somebody learned she was Muslim, she said, "Aren't all Muslims terrorists?" Imagine the struggle we have as adults, and our children have to wrestle with these concepts before they're even young adults. So these moments call for leadership, that on our dinner tables, in our homes, we make it okay for our kids to ask questions, to be confused, to seek help. We bring them to build connections in the masjid, not just with the imams, but with their friends, with their extended families and their uncles and aunts that are around you, of families trying to be better people. It requires leadership because we say it's okay that when a person is struggling, it's okay for the oldest amongst us and the youngest amongst us to want that help. In this regard, I really applaud the IER health team who's offering counseling and mental health referral services. If somebody's looking for clarification, you shouldn't hesitate, raleigmasjid.org/health, and take a few minutes to expose those thoughts and work through them with a professional that's volunteering their time. If we have questions about religion, we should feel comfortable to come here, consult our imams, connect with scholars throughout the country and understand our religion, not leave it. And if you say that the media is dropping their responsibility, I agree with you. And we should hold the media to account to report consistently crime as crime and terrorism as terrorism. If you say that those in authority are letting go of their responsibility, I agree with you. But there's someone else that's dropped part of our responsibility, and that's you and I. Because ultimately, if we open our doors to our neighbors, if we really live the meaning of Allahu Akbar in our lives, if we are defining Islam through example and role models to those that Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed us to teach, not as speakers, not as media spokespeople, as laborers, as workers, as working class, as professionals, as doctors, as taxi drivers, as neighbors, as mothers and fathers. If each of us carried our piece, then the media could talk all they wanted. The understanding of people would not be shifted. So we have to also ask ourselves, what have we done to reclaim our right to say with clarity that we want Allahu Akbar back? So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those that live the true meanings of a takbir and of the connection to Him in our lives. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us firm upon His deen. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect our children and protect our spouses. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to enable us to overcome this tragedy, to bring us together and not drive us apart. I ask Allah to make us firm in standing for justice wherever it is. and for the needy. Allahumma ameen. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم آمين آمين. A special announcement that after daylight savings time ends this Sunday, November 5th, the times will also change for the daily prayers. The Friday prayer third shift time will change effective next Friday, November 10th. Starting next Friday, the new time for the third shift will be from 2:10 to 2:40 p.m. Please check the website raleighmasjid.org for updates to the daily prayer times. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقم الصلاة